The year winded down with an uneven month. AEW shined with its Continental Classic tournament, though nearly ended in disaster with everything surrounding a less than stellar pay-per-view. Their American contemporaries only ran 3 weeks, airing clip shows during the holidays, and the last major shows in Japan were very hit or miss. Despite that, the highs were enough to have plenty of matches to talk about from December, rounding out this monthly series documenting my favorites over the course of the year. If this is your first time coming across the channel, here's some terms and conditions as to how I go about doing this. First, it's obvious I will not have seen every single match to take place. Time and money are finite things, and I have some major blind spots compared to other channels, blogs, or podcasts. The great thing is, if there's something I haven't seen that you'd have, I'd love to hear your recommendations in the comments and continue the discussion. Second, favorite and best are different things, and my favorite matches may differ from, say, something critically acclaimed by Wrestling Observer newsletter. It's not a top 10s or hidden gems type thing either. My selection of matches is simply based on personal enjoyment rather than star ratings, cage match ratings, business metrics, etc. And last but not least, a spoiler warning for match finishes. By the numbers, I've watched 265 matches spanning 13 promotions. Here are a few of my favorites from December of 2023. The majority of the matches I enjoyed in December were from the Blue League of AEW's Round Robin tournament. I wanted to limit myself as to not go too heavy on it, as there's more comprehensive coverage elsewhere. I chose to talk about this match specifically, as there's a good chance I'll discuss a later match in the Match of the Year special. I really enjoyed what they did here. I appreciate the booking of the C2 as a whole, as every match that dictates Eddie Kingston's path were encounters with the Blackpool Combat Club. His first match and loss came from Bryan Danielson. He turned things around here against Claudio, and had to go through Danielson in the semifinal in order to get to Moxley. While this match may not be as significant as the Bryan matches of the final, it's a match that shows how far Eddie Kingston has come since this year's trilogy of Claudio matches began. There's clearly no feeling out processes needed between these two, and in the opening striking exchange, you can see how hellbent Claudio is on avenging his loss from September. Eddie nearly wins early with a Northern Lights bomb that's completely missed by commentary. Claudio is mean as hell in this match. He's constantly getting in petty shots, and after an early spill to the outside, won't even entertain the idea of taking a countout win. He unleashes some sickening offense in the corners, raining down forearms, elbows, and even a Shibata-esque dropkick. Instead of relying on simply being the better wrestler, he's swept up in his rage, which acts as fearful symmetry from the previous meetings. The difference maker is that Eddie never loses sight of the mission. He wins with a similar roll-up counter that was his undoing back in March, a testament to his growth as a champion. It's one thing to have seen Eddie beat Claudio to become a world champion, it's another to see him walk into a match with these stakes, with his tournament and championships on the line, and be the cooler head that prevails. As a wise man once said, revenge is a fool's game. It's been a while since Higuchi was given a run of singles matches, and to little surprise they've been very good. After another great match with Harashima, Higuchi faced a refreshed Yuki Iino, who has left his pheromones gimmick to resemble a more cut-and-dry powerhouse. I expected a total hoss fight, especially in the tournament setting, and while this is rooted in that, Higuchi's performance takes it in a different direction. He's in a class of wrestlers that can make his own beatdown feel so convincing, while still being the most threatening presence in the room. His selling in this match really emphasizes that quality. This is all prompted by Iino rushing Higuchi into the ring apron and working on his back from that point. Higuchi never fails to register a single thing, making something as simple as a snapmare or an Irish whip look troubling, and I don't think he crossed into overdramatic territory either. In breaks of the action, you can watch him laboring, stumbling, and hitting his own lower back to get the feeling in those nerves. Iino attempts to stay in control, but when afforded some space, Higuchi regains some ground. From here on, the match lives up to the hoss fight that I expected. These two can bring it, and while they do beat the hell out of each other, it's the way that Higuchi navigates through it that makes things a whole lot more interesting. Something like completely sitting out to dodge a diving lariat, or finding openings to pounce are examples of this. The finish is a sumo exchange, ended in a claw-assisted STO, where Higuchi uses his body weight as leverage to pick up the pinfall. I think this was a really cool choice, considering it may have been too much to lift a man for the claw slam with an injured back. While maybe not the best match of the tournament, it's a very impressive performance from Higuchi that helps establish this refreshed version of Iino as a genuine threat by just scraping by. We got another seasonal plunder brawl from AEW's women's division, this time as a blow-off to an on-and-off feud for the Collision regulars. This gives me a chance to talk a bit about Kris Statlander, who I think has flourished upon her return in May. She has elevated herself to the upper echelon of the division, and I consider her right up there with the likes of Jamie Hayter and Hikaru Shida. She is always getting the most out of her opponents and often making them look a lot better. I'm not sure if the Julia Hart push would have gone as well as it did without those matches with Stat. She has been great, and I just wanted to take a moment to express that. We find her teaming with another channel favorite in Willow Nightingale, in Pulp Fiction-inspired gear no less, against Mercedes Martinez and Diamante. The common denominator here is that all four of these women can slug it out with the best of them, and their conflict over the last couple of months has led to this street fight. Simply put, it's a car crash and it kicks ass. They pack a lot into 10 minutes, steadily escalating throughout the entire runtime. I appreciate the creativity applied, like Stat and Willow utilizing their strength advantage to press Diamante into the stairs. The Mercedes Spider German to Statlander on the pile of chairs specifically was the highlight of the match for me. Credit to everyone involved for being willing to take all of these risks. They go to the extremes of double blood, an assisted table spot to the outside, and even thumbtacks. The chain assisted discus lariat is a cool choice for a finish as well. It's a whole lot of fun, and that's all it really needed to be. SEAdLINNNG gave us one more Sareee singles match, under unfortunate circumstances as the scheduled tag title match was altered due to Ayame Sasamura's partner taking an indefinite hiatus. By pivoting to a singles match, and a Beyond the Sea title match no less, it puts Sasamura behind the 8-ball against a dominant champion who is closing out a year of personal resurgence. I was curious to see how this would play out, with Sareee being positioned as a significant favorite. Sareee wasn't entirely big-leaguing Sasamura here, though she did express some indifference and even sarcasm after some early pin attempts. You can see her lean into this earlier in the match, straight up standing on top of her at one point. I think I would have liked to see more of this attitude to emphasize Sasamura as an underdog. Sasamura begins to step up when Sareee attempts to work the leg, though it's countered and dropped from that point. Out of frustration, the strikes begin to fly. Naturally, there are some sickening shots, specifically atop the turnbuckle, or when Sareee is repeatedly booting Ayame in the face. She refuses to go down easily though. An extended sleeper sequence and some near falls make for an exciting back and forth closing stage, though despite her best efforts it's to no avail. Saree's intensity is simply too much to overcome. This is more in the nice little match category than previous efforts, but it's still one that I enjoyed. I won't complain about closing the year out with more Sareee matches either. With matches against Mio Momono and Big Hosh right around the corner, there's little signs of slowing down for the Sun God's increasingly great output of matches. I nearly missed out on this before recording, but I'm so glad that I didn't. These two teams had an insane match back in February that admittedly I didn't see until Big Japan put it on their YouTube a few weeks ago. That match pretty much broke down into a fistfight before astronauts got too big for their boots and upon a restart decided to have light tubes involved. This match stays within the boundaries of a tag team wrestling match and does so at an incredibly high level, which is expected from astronauts at this point. I wasn't familiar with Takumi Tsukamoto before these two matches, but he put in a hell of a shift here and left a great impression. Abe and Takeda started things off in a civil fashion all things considered, with some really nice mat exchanges. It's when Nomura and Tsukamoto tag in where the nastiness to their last bout resumes. One stiff kick to the arm of Tsukamoto changes the course of the match. Astronauts are merciless while in control, as both get their shots in at every opportunity, and Nomura specifically dishes out some targeted offense that is incredibly ill-willed. This puts Tsukamoto in a bad spot, though whenever he is able to fight back, the crowd lights up accordingly. Takeda makes for a good hot tag and acts as a lightning rod for the faster-paced action. He has great chemistry with Abe, and the two have a display of one-upmanship before the match heads into its final phase. Nomura and Tsukamoto alleviate their partners and start slugging it out. Despite the damage done to his left arm, Tsukamoto begins throwing haymakers with his right, doing his best to hang in there. Nomura continues his work and at one point just throws a straight punch to the injured arm, which is a minor thing that I got a kick out of. The drama escalates with submission attempts as everyone is rotating in and out of the ring in attempts to break all of the falls for a frantic conclusion. Tsukamoto, against all odds, with Abe and Agori special, shifts his weight for the pinfall to crown new tag team champions. This was really great. It provided something different from their last match while not lacking in intensity by any means. The result was surprising, and I really appreciated Tsukamoto in this role. It's great leaving a match where the person you might have been least familiar with ends up being one of the better parts of it. I wish we got more Takeda in the match, but that's a minor qualm for what is more than a worthy follow-up to their clash in February. Looking back on all the matches I've discussed this year, I didn't touch on a lot of tag team wrestling, which is disappointing. I'm not sure if it was a down year in general, or if I just didn't do a good enough job of seeking it out. But for what I did see, Astronauts were the highlight, and I look forward to what they bring in 2024. I didn't love the match between these two in July, though I was cautiously optimistic about them getting it right this time around. This match worked a lot more for me. I should point out that if you have issues with either of these guys' tendencies, specifically in these big matches, I don't think this will change your mind. For me though, they put together something more consistent than their match in Korakuen Hall. It doesn't rest on the significance of the occasion, and provides something more character driven. It's also 10 minutes shorter, which I think helps a great deal. Nakajima enters repping the so-called Tokon style, which is pretty much Inokiism cosplay. He's never been a New Japan guy. This is all out of spite to undermine Kento and All Japan in general. The new look was definitely a surprise, but on brand. Nakajima has made some deliberate gear choices in the past. Things start pretty similar to their last encounter, though when they brawl on the outside, the action feels frantic, a good indication of things to come. Nakajima continues the mind games, utilizing moves from those under Inoki's learning tree, like a Dragon Screw and STF. I don't know if that's something he'll do long term, but it works well for debuting the gimmick. It's also nice to see that much dedication to the bit, rather than just being a fresh coat of paint. Things take a turn when Nakajima is sent from the top rope to the floor, giving Kento some time to recover and attempt to take control. This is where all of the big match offense you'd expect begins, and in desperation, Nakajima blasts Kento with a high kick to the arm. It's the turning point of the match, as now Kento has an injured limb to target, though he still relies on it by throwing a Kensuke lariat. Because of this, he's unable to execute his bridging German suplex finisher. Kento's selling here is inconsistent, unfortunately, though I do like the idea of him paying the price for taking the risk with his arm. The final stretch is as big match gets, with some brutal exchanges and an emotional Kento being willed on by the hot crowd. Nakajima gets the better of Kento, sticking it to him with a Northern Lights bomb. Instead of going for the pin though, he submits Kento with an Inoki-influenced armbar. Katsuhiko Nakajima closes out All Japan's last show of the year with Antonio Inoki's catchphrase, which is a level of pettiness I have to respect. While not without its flaws, I really enjoyed this. It solved a few of my problems with the first match while feeling just as personal, and also added those wrinkles of the clashing schools of thought. My main criticism is that if the goal was for Nakajima to win with the armbar to prove a point, why wouldn't he have just targeted the arm from the get-go? When the match veers in that direction, it feels more opportunistic than premeditated. It's just a strange decision structurally in my opinion. I still think what they got right here was very strong. I don't know enough to speak on all the turmoil in All Japan coming out of this show, but I hope everything turns out okay. I would hate to see them lose all the momentum they've built over the course of 2023. And before I go, here are some honorable mentions that weren't brought up in previous entries. Black Taurus and Los Vipers vs Aramis, Iron Kid, and Wicked Wicked from West Coast Pro, December 3rd. A wild lucha fireworks show that you can find for free right here on YouTube. Yuka Sakazaki vs Mizuki from Tokyo Joshi Pro, December 6th. Yuka's proper send-off from TJPW was a 3-minute exhibition where she and her tag team partner held nothing back, without a single dry eye in the room. The Real World Tag League Final from All Japan on December 6th. Some further viewing for the Miyahara-Nakajima feud. I enjoyed a lot of the exchanges here and didn't think anything overstayed its welcome. Maika vs Suzu Suzuki from Stardom, December 29th. An instance where the emotional payoff outshines a frustrating match, especially considering how much I was into the build. Don't get me wrong, Maika winning the red belt is something I didn't expect, and I really look forward to her run. I just think there was a clash of ideals between what these two were building and being restricted by the Bushiroad main event formula. I think it's possible for both to be true, that the payoff was effective despite not loving how they got to it. In the end, the emotional response is what I'll take from it. Adam Copeland vs Christian Cage from AEW, December 30th. What a great piece of nonsense this was. A couple of 50-year-olds having a street fight that salvaged something of a bad night. Normally I'd complain about the overbooked ending, but this fits so well with Christian Cage's character that I couldn't help but love it. And last but not least, Dan Tamura vs L. Lindemann from All Japan December 31st. A really good match and moment for Dan, and I wish more junior title matches had this much focus and intensity. And that is it from me. If you got this far into the video or spent any time with this series over the last year, thank you so much. Between any of the comments, messages, and friends made along the way, I'm incredibly grateful if you gave this series a chance. A quick programming reminder, if all goes as planned, you'll be hearing from me a lot more frequently starting with the 2024 series, The Week Worth Watching. It'll be the same format as this, just once a week. Like I said last month, if it ever gets too hard to keep up with, I'll adjust accordingly. I'm still figuring this stuff out as I go, and will be completely transparent if I bite off more than I can chew. The Match of the Year special is also coming along steadily, and that'll go up as soon as it's finished. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you all the very best in 2024.